Don't worry, we're here with you.
Okay, sorry, we're back with you.
Yeah.
And then, so I got this decree in the post, and I realized I didn't participate. So I established that there's a syndicate that sells these things, and in order for his divorce to go through, he said he didn't have children, because then it didn't have to go through the family advocates and no maintenance agreement.
And you have 5 children with him.
And I have 5 children.
And he said he had no children.
Correct. So obviously I didn't have a maintenance agreement in place, but so I couldn't actually claim maintenance from him. So what he would do is he would go, "Oh, you've been bad, so I'm not going to give you any money."
Oh, wow.
And then when I was good, then, and if I needed money for the house, then he would give me the money. So I recognized this dynamic that was going on. And then obviously he provoked me once, and then I went and laid charges. But I went up to Pretoria to go and do them as I was advised. And they turned me away from the police station. They said it's a civil, it's a civil, not a criminal case.
Okay.
I mean, this is SAPS, and you can divorce people fraudulently, and it's not a criminal matter. Just makes you think.
Yeah.
And then I burst into tears, and I phoned my attorney and I said, like, what now? And he said, come home. I told you the justice system is crooked.
Sure.
And I said, no, I'm not ready to come home. Anyway, I went to the High Court because I wanted to go and see the judge who actually oversaw the divorce, because as a lay person, I could pick up the discrepancies.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just go and have a chat to him, and he wasn't there, and they said, well, we can't help you. So I said, well, that's fine. Then I'll chain myself to the building, because it happened here. This is where it happened, and somebody here needs to help me. And then he said, no, he can't. So I said, okay, then I'm going to chain myself to the building and phone every single media house, because there's stuff going on in this court that is wrong. I ended up seeing the deputy judge president, and he was aware that the syndicate selling these fraudulent divorces. And I will lay my head on a block that it is 99.5% men who have the money to pay these syndicates.
For these things to happen.
Yeah, so it's women who are being completely abused.
Yeah.
Economically, because they don't have the economic resources. Anyway, so he assisted me to lay charges, but I asked him a question: why am I the first woman who's so aggrieved that is actually sitting in your office?
Yeah.
You know, wanting
this is
justice.
obviously happening to a lot of women.
Because that, for me, it was about a sense of justice. An injustice had been done to me, and why can't I get justice? And he said women are scared, they don't have the money. I mean, this keeps coming up. Women don't have the money, potentially putting their fathers in jail. And I said, I will become that woman, because we have a right to justice. Just because we don't have the financial means doesn't mean to say that we don't have a right to justice. So he sent me off to organised crime units to open up a case eventually. So I did open up a case.
For the fraudulent divorce.
But just for the record, that was 10 years ago, and I'm still waiting for my day in court. So we've never actually gone to court for my fraudulent divorce.
So did it actually get sorted out though eventually, like a proper divorce?
Well, I applied to have
it settlement.
Yeah, I applied to have that set aside, and then my papers. But again, you know, he avoided the sheriff, and I eventually had a flight to Johannesburg and go to his office.
Personally?
Yes, to my ex's office. And he said, what are you doing here? And it's strange you should ask. I'm here to have some documents served. You know, your divorce, well, wasn't quite right. So we need to redo that. I'm having that set aside. But also my divorce papers.
Yeah.
I did eventually have it set aside in the August, but then it took me another 2 years. So for a period of about 3.5 years, I did not have a maintenance agreement.
Jeez, 2, 3 years, and these are 5 children.
I had 4 living with me,
taking care of. 4 living with you, and where was your other child?
She was overseas studying.
And who was paying for that?
So she wasn't studying, she was teaching already.
Oh, okay.
So she was
independent.
independent.
So you had 4 kids that you had to maintain in this time?
Well, the eldest one was working, but the point is this was their family home, and I had 3 children.
And you had expenses, and you had to take care of yourself. So, just listening to your journey, when did you start when your group, your Facebook group, when did you decide to start your organization?
So I think my divorce went through in 2013. So I still had a year. So obviously he did not honor his maintenance agreement, even though I had one from my divorce. So I immediately went from the divorce courts to the maintenance courts.
Yeah.
Because one of my kids is a mentally challenged child. And I mean, for me, he was coming to work with me every single day because I couldn't leave him at home.
Yeah.
So I was trying to earn a living and take care of my mentally handicapped child who was sitting in my car every day. So it obviously had its limitations. And just on that note, I once said to him, "You're not paying me, so I think I'm going to send the 2 youngest kids up to you and you can look after them."
And what did he say?
He said, "Well, I'll put the youngest one in boarding school and my mentally challenged child, I'll put him in a home." He said, "How do you expect me to earn an income?" Very interesting here. But I was expected.
Okay, wow.
So I had an attorney and I had an advocate and I was still battling in the maintenance courts for a whole year. And then one night I came back from court and I thought, you know what, I have resources. I've had access to an attorney and to an advocate, thank goodness, pro bono. I mean, I couldn't afford them, obviously. How are other women coping with this? Because this is a structural problem. For a year I've been battling in the maintenance court. So I came home from court that night and I started the group, and that was in 2014.
Wow.
So we've just turned 7 years old, and I mean, I didn't put it all over social media, it grew organically.
Yes.
So people just joined the group, and so in the first 3-4 years it was pretty slow.
Yeah.
But in that time I started seeing patterns and recognizing that it's something that is just so normalized. It didn't matter what color you were, what race you were, what religion you were
from, what the relationship dynamic is,
whether you were married,
whether you just had the baby from
Correct.
a one night stand. None of those dynamics count when it's time for you to actually get maintenance.
There's a common patterning, irrespective.
Wow, your story is very inspiring. First of all, I'd love to apologize personally for everything that you had to go through. Because I feel like as women, we have these stories that we say, you know, and we always just have to talk about what we went through. But I feel like we never just take a moment to acknowledge all the pain and the struggle that you went through. And before I speak more about your group and your work, where did you find the strength in you? Like going from being a woman who was just a kept wife to telling people that you're going to chain yourself to a building unless they help you. What do you think the turning point was in you, in your personality, for you to change from being the submissive, scared woman to having the balls, if I could say correct, to go out there and actually fight for your rights?
Well, I've never been a submissive woman. I mean, I've always been feisty. My ex-husband traveled a lot, so I essentially brought the kids up. I spent most of the time doing the parenting. And at one stage I had 5 kids at 5 different schools. And with my mentally handicapped child, I've always had to fight for his rights.
Yeah.
Because he is. I mean, he's 28 now, but he's like a 5-year-old. So going out to restaurants or going out to even malls, you know, I constantly had to say, my child has a right to be in this space, even though he's not normal. Yes, his behavior is bad, but he has a right to be here.
Yeah.
You do not have a right to tell me to remove him. So I've always had to, you know, I think he introduced me to standing up for people who don't have a voice. He might have prepared me for the journey ahead, long before I thought I would actually go this route. But I think it was also just realizing that it wasn't just me.
Yeah.
And that nobody else was speaking up in this space. And the more I started seeing what the problems were and how scared women were, because it's
women
not just
scared,
a lot of women come out of abusive relationships. Look, I mean, there was abuse, but mine was more emotional and psychological, and quite a lot of financial. Now that I know what I know, but he didn't physically intimidate me.
Okay.
But there are a lot of women
who come
abuse, correct. And I mean, still now when I go to court, and I mean, 10 years down the line, I can still feel. I mean, I get really worked up, and my heart starts beating, and my palms start sweating.
Yes.
And I'm on a sense. No, I'm not anxious, but I'm triggered really. Just knowing I'm going to court, I'm triggered.
Yeah, it's a scary experience. It's not easy to stand up for
yourself. Well, it's not just him, but you know, it's like arguing with somebody who's supposed to impose or enforce the Maintenance Act, and sitting listening to them. When you've got to know the act, like probably better than them, and you're going, but this is how it's supposed to go. Yeah. And they go, oh no, don't tell me my job.
Yeah, no.
So you know
so
that you're going into that.
You don't get good reception in those rooms. you don't really get help.
You don't feel like you're supported.
Yeah.
You almost, and this is what I've observed on the group as well, it's almost like you're made to feel bad for daring to try and uphold your child's rights. For
yourself. Exactly.
Or yourself.
Your child.
Or knowing your rights even. You know, they expect you to just sit there and listen and do what they tell you, whether it's correct, legal, lawful or not.
Yeah.
So the moment you go, hang on, this is not right, you are met with a lot of resistance anyway.
So what I'm picking up a lot from your story and standing up is you are telling women the first step to do is actually to stand up for yourself, like to acknowledge that you have a right to be heard, because a lot of women are scared. And then going forward, what advice would you give a woman who's sitting out there watching this, who's having problems with her husband or her ex-husband or boyfriend, and she wants to get maintenance for her child, but she's scared? And she doesn't know what to do, and she doesn't know where to start.
Well, the first starting place is going to court. As scary as what it is to just go to court, doesn't matter.
Open an official maintenance
because
case.
You know, it's not just that we all know that you have family members who go like, don't waste your time. You've had friends who go, I've been going to court for years and nothing happens. Don't even waste your time. You're never going to get maintenance. And then also often there's threats that if you take me to maintenance court, I'm going to make sure you get nothing.
Yeah. No, that's a big one.
So in spite of all of that, go to court. But
open a case.
Start the process. Because Start the process because often on average, I think it takes about 3 months once you've gone there and made your application until you get a date.
Yes.
That's assuming the person arrives on that date. And then make sure that your documentation is correct.
Yeah,
but before all of that is know the Maintenance Act.
Oh, that's important.
Because it's quite a simple piece of legislation. If you take out the legal jargon, like the references
and
to
is that something
sections,
we can have access to just on Google, the Maintenance Act?
You can download it.
Download
it off Google.
Okay.
Ignore the legal jargon and just the preamble is actually the beginning of the Act to explain what the Act is for.
Okay.
It's quite clear. And it's simply in the best interest of the child to protect the child's rights. The child, this is the preamble, is the child has a right to financial support from both parents.
Yes.
And the courts are mandated to uphold the child's rights because it's in the best interest of the child as paramount. So, and even in our Bill of Rights and even in our Constitution, the 5 basics that they consider is shelter, education, housing, clothing, and health
Which
care.
are basic needs,
Those are our basic human needs. So it's not to say that you can't get aftercare, or any extramural, or anything extra. That depends on the means of the parents. But those 5 fundamentals have got to be provided for. So we also. So that's, and then it's just knowing the process, what to expect because it's so intimidating.
Yeah.
So on my group, what we do is we collectively educate people what to expect when you go to court, because we are intimidated by authority by nature, and even more so if it's a legal thing, because I think there's a lot of history, and we're threatened always, I'll take you to court, I'll send a lawyer's letter, the police. So we have this inherent fear of the judiciary, justice.
If the ladies want to join your group, I guess you can explain further in what are the benefits of joining your movement?
Yes, it's absolutely hugely beneficial to join the group because you essentially learn hacks on how to navigate the process from other people who've gone through it. And there's a core of people who over the years have got to have a very clear understanding. There's actually also members of the Department of Justice on the group.
Yeah,
there's also there's also attorneys on the groups. There's also bad advice, but that is quickly corrected.
So a support structure as well.
So there's a support structure because often women will post and go, I want to withdraw my maintenance agreement, or I'm giving up. And there's the moral support of going, I hear you, I went through it for 5 years, I didn't give up, or I did give up and I went back again, but then I became informed. And from the emotional and moral support and being more informed and understanding what is expected, and also how to hold people accountable.
Yes.
Because even if you know the Maintenance Act, there's a lot of staff who don't respect that, and they actually become quite intimidated when you seem to know the Act better than them.
Yeah.
And then you become victimized. But we have rights as well, and they're just doing a job.
Women, we have rights.
Yes, we do, but they're
I
also
like
just
that.
doing a job,
Yeah,
They have bosses.
exactly.
And they also can face disciplinary hearings.
Mm.
So, we also, if you are not getting justice, or your dignity is being affronted, or there's been direct violations, then we also guide you how to complain, who to complain to. And it's right up beginning of this year, the public protector had actually called for complaints about the maintenance courts.
Wow, well done.
So, there's various levels that you can complain.
And how do people join your group? Do they have to pay? How do they find you? Please drop us your details so we can know all about how we can join your group and if we want to be a part of it.
So Facebook is the best place because it's one, people have free access via free data.
Okay.
You can't actually see the graphics, but I mean you at least have access to information.
Awesome.
It's a private group, so there is some privacy, but for 67,000 people it's pretty public.
Wow, it's gone to 67,000 members. Well done.
Thank you. So you can post your question directly on the group, or you can post anonymously because there might be other family members.
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe in protecting people, not naming and shaming, being respectful, and also try and use the platform to educate, not just about maintenance matters, but maintenance is just one aspect of it, but it's a very important aspect in terms of economic equality.
Yes.
Because
can you quickly tell us a little bit more about that? Because you did tell me that's a new thing that you're going on with the economic equality, financial abuse of women. Can you walk us through that very quickly and touch on the work you're doing in that space?
Yeah, so I've just launched my research because there's not enough data on financial abuse, and economic abuse is part of our Domestic Violence Act.
What is financial abuse?
Well, I believe that it's a form of economic abuse. Okay. So economic abuse is if you're in a relationship and somebody purposefully prevents you from being economically active. So they prevent you from working, or you work and you have to pay them your salary, and then they get to spend the money, or they get you fired from your job. So that's economic abuse. That's how it's kind of defined in the Act. So I believe that financial abuse is a form of economic abuse, and it has a much wider scope.
Yes.
So an example is if you are getting maintenance and you are meant to pay on the last day of the month.
Yes.
And most debit orders and payments are due at the end of the month.
Yes.
So if somebody deliberately pays late, one, if you have debit orders, your debit orders are going to bounce.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, those are the ripple effects.
Your debit orders bounce, but if that happens continuously, you get listed on the credit bureau as a bad debtor.
Wow.
Which affects your ability to get a home, to get a car.
Yes.
And that's not even considered. So just that one little act is a form of financial abuse, because you are definitely intentionally inflicting some kind of abuse that will have consequences.
So even if you're like a married woman, and your husband is the one who gives you the money, and then he controls the amount of money he gives you, sometimes he says yes, no, or like cuts you off, is that a form of financial abuse where like he doesn't help you but you can't work?
Sure, it's as subtle as whether you're working or not, and you're going to go and buy like basics like groceries, and they demand that you give slips.
Yes.
And if they see an item on there that is perhaps not a household item but a personal item, that why did you spend that on you?
That's
or
a
you
form
need
of
to
abuse.
pay that money back to me because I gave you money. This is taking in context. So if you have an agreement that you get 1,000 rand and you buy food, and obviously if you are not providing any food, there is a sense of expectation to go, look, I'm giving you 1,000 rand, where is the food? But if you are coming home with food and the bill is constantly questioned or interrogated and says, okay, but why did you spend this? This is on you, it's not for the family. So it's like denying your needs.
Yes. So
and they can go and spend money on a hobby or in the bar or on anything. without discussing it on you, but they
yes.
will interrogate every cent that you spend on yourself. That's a form of financial
That's
abuse.
yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that is pretty normalized in relationships.
Wonderful. So you're saying you're doing a lot of research in this area, and this is your focus on your workshops and the things you're doing in your space right now?
Well, it's not my workshops, but I've launched the first phase, because my theory is that financial abuse is a silent but devastating form of gender-based violence.
Wow.
With an intersection to poverty.
Of gender-based violence.
Yes, well, the economic abuse is in the Domestic Violence Act.
Yeah.
But it's not broad enough. So withholding maintenance, besides it being a criminal act, it is intentionally punishing the mother.
Exactly.
Because if the Maintenance Act is about the best interest of the child and the child's right to financial support from both parents, however your relationship ended, should not impact on...
And it is punishing the mother, because now she must make sure that what you're not giving, that child has. So you're not actually... yes, you're punishing the child, but because with maintenance, a lot of people are like, the child suffers. But the person who suffers the most is actually the mother, because now she must make sure that that child has everything, and everything is on her, and it's almost like her pain is silenced, and she's not acknowledged.
Well, the child can't go to court and go, I'm not getting the financial support. It depends on the primary caregiver. And I often say to people, so as primary caregivers, which are the majority of women in this country, there's nearly 70% of kids growing up without their fathers, who are paying just about no maintenance.
Sure.
So can you imagine as a mother, if you didn't feed a child for 7 days, what do you think the consequences would be?
The child wouldn't survive.
Well, the child could probably end up in hospital. It will definitely be malnutrition. But your neighbors could also, there's a high chance that either your own family members or your neighbors will have phoned DSD, a social worker, and going, that mother is abusing her child.
Exactly, and women, unlike the counterpart, can't just run away because the child lives with you, so you have to stand up and do something.
Well, very seldom. Look, it does happen, but very seldom. So women will overcompromise, they will sacrifice just to make sure. I mean, there's many women who go to bed without supper, but to make sure, or less, to make sure that their children eat. But it has such a large impact. It impacts on girl children leaving school early. It affects puberty. It affects menstruation, because if you're not getting maintenance and you're only depending on a social grant, how do you provide for your girls' menstruation needs?
Far-reaching effects.
How do you provide for the absolute basic needs? And then women get blamed for not doing a good job on raising children. But we also know that unemployment is highest amongst women. We also know that women do the most menial jobs that are lowest paid. And then there are some women who do 3 jobs a day, and who is looking after the children?
Because they need that care as well.
So the scrutiny is always on the mother. But it's very seldom on the father. And I mean, it's not just about money, but there's research, that's quite extensive research, that says that if fathers are not involved in their children's lives, there's a greater likelihood that they're not going to financially support them because of the physical distance.
They're not the attachment.
Correct. They don't see the children starving. They don't have to listen to the kids go, please, can I have this? I've got no shoes. Or my friend has got a phone. We know that's not a priority, but we know what it's like and what kids' needs are. They're not having to deal with those. So mom is always like bad cop. And if they don't ever see dad, and those that see dad occasionally, he's Disney dad, because he only gets...
He just comes for presents and good times.
Correct.
He's not there for the everyday...
So it has very deep reaching impacts. So if the courts enforce maintenance, it takes out a whole lot of opportunities for other forms of abuse. Because even if you've got a maintenance agreement in place and you're having to phone the father, like 15 days after they're supposed to have paid,
they're still not paying,
and they don't answer the phone, it's natural you're going to start getting cross and annoyed. Or they say, don't phone me, go to court. And then when you go to court, you get threatened because you've gone to court. Or they get their new partner to phone you and go, leave my man alone.
These are the dynamics.
These are the dynamics
that we are all facing as women.
So if the courts enforced maintenance, it would alleviate a whole lot of other stresses that women go through just trying to provide for their kids or to get the other parent to provide equally. And COVID has really exposed just how vulnerable women are.
Yeah. It's even worse now because unemployment rates even went higher, and now, I mean, I saw the courts are even fuller now.
Mm-hmm.
So, Felicity, if you had to give any advice to women, all types of women, not just women who need maintenance or who are single women, all women, young women and older women, just key advice, what would you say?
Well, considering the sector that I work in, I think it's important that our girl children are educated in terms of their reproductive rights. Yes. And the responsibilities, and also that to become financially astute.
Very important.
When I say that to become financially independent, it's that when you do get married, check your marriage contract. Well, first of all, marriage shouldn't be a goal.
Yeah.
And having children shouldn't be a goal either. But we know these things happen. We make choices and things happen. Mm-hmm. But even when it does happen, that long term, to always save a percentage of money, irrespective of what income it is.
That's very important, because when you have so many expenses as a woman, especially as a single mom, you're always paying for things and you really do forget to put money away.
So even if it's like if you're getting a social grant, take 20 Rand of that and start a savings account. But particularly if you're in a marriage or in a relationship, to always make sure that you have a little bit of reserve, so that we know with such a high prevalence of domestic violence in this country, and most women don't leave because they are financially dependent on people. So always make sure that you have a little bit of money, and this is not being a doomsayer. If your marriage or your relationship does work out and is healthy, then at least you still have your own little reserve.
Become financially independent, stand on your own feet, save money. That's what I've heard.
It's very important, because I mean it just gives you a sense of agency and the ability to make decisions, and also in relationships to not feel that you don't have worth because you're not earning an income. Okay. So if you're in a relationship where you happen to not be working and you're a full-time mom, that you still have value and you are contributing. Don't feel that you are not contributing anything. And they have these discussions that if somebody is the provider, you are doing all the other work that is not paid.
And that's a lot of work.
But it has value.
Exactly.
It's a full-time job.
Exactly. If you had to pay a helper or a nanny, not that you're a helper nanny, but I mean that to show that it's actually a job, like cleaning up, taking care of kids, fetching them, that's an au pair. That's actually actual role.
How many times don't you hear women say, well, I gave up work to look after the kids and to save all these other expenses. So if you're saving and you're adding value, why don't you get paid?
Exactly.
Why don't you get an allowance for doing this labor? It is labor. It is work. You are contributing.
That is amazing, Felicity. So, just quickly before we close, what are your future plans, Felicity? Where will we see you? Because we can see you brightening up the space and fighting for all our rights. What are your plans going forward so we can keep catching up with you?
My research is very important because we need the data. We don't have data on financial abuse. We need to define it, which will influence policy, but that's going to be a process. I've started moving into a space of working with men.
It's wonderful, yes.
Because I think, I feel like we're dealing with a band-aid, with a seeping wound. And we go to maintenance court, is almost like having a band-aid and like trying to slap it onto this seeping wound.
Yes.
And it's the trajectory is on a constant incline.
Yeah.
So we've got amendments. So the laws are not changing the trajectory.
Have your work cut
so
out
what is
for
going
you.
to change that is behavior.
Yes.
And I believe that none of us are perfect, and we need to work together and acknowledge that we are also flawed as human beings, and find the common ground forward for our own emotional and mental well-being, so that we are not parenting with resentment and anger, and that we are a better example for our children.
Sure.
because they are
I
our
heard-
future.
You said a lot there, and our children are definitely our future. Well, thank you so much, Felicity. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. Like, wow, she's such an amazing, phenomenal woman. She has so much going for her. Where can our viewers catch up with you if they want to find you? You can just drop us any of your social media, anything you want us to know, because you have a YouTube channel also. Just let us know those details so they can follow up with you.
Wonderful, thanks. So I started a YouTube channel, and I do talk about the maintenance process. It's quite cynical at times, but I also talk about other topics. So it's not limited only to maintenance. Because I mean, the few things that I've mentioned, it does involve a whole lot more.
Awesome. So just Google Felicity Guest.
Felicity and Guest on
Felicity
Facebook and my YouTube, And then my group is Child Maintenance Difficulties in South Africa on Facebook.
I'm so happy to have caught up with Felicity. I think just from this talk alone, as women out there, we've definitely learned a lot. She's dropped all her details. Please do catch up with Felicity, and thank you so much for the high impact work that you're doing for society. I think you don't need to have an accolade or get likes to be acknowledged, but the work you're doing is touching lives. It has high impact work, and one day when you leave this earth, we will always remember you. You'll always be remembered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, I'm so humbled. And I'm just like so grateful that I get to do this work every day, because I meet amazing women. I mean, I wouldn't have met you if I didn't do this work.
Exactly. Yes, actually, yes.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.